Okay, first of all, thank you very much for taking your time out today over your lunch break to attend the AskFirst flu vaccination webinar. So this webinar's today's objective is to give you an overview of our platform as to how we support patients who need to have a flu vaccination to be able to make a booking directly into your GPIT system, and also how we support practices so that you are making flu appointments available as easy as possible, but to the right patients in the right time. So on the call today, you've got myself, Gaurav Mehta, and I lead on Sensley's UK offering called AskFirst. So AskFirst is a patient platform for online consultations, which allows a patient to be able to query with their practice a symptom, but at the same time, it is able to book an appointment with a patient for a patient into their EMIS instance. On the call today, you have a practice manager, an ex-practice manager called Julian Harrington from Berryfield's practice, who was there previously, and we did deploy this feature last year. So I thought it'd be useful today to hear from him so that you have an overview of his experience is as a ex-practice manager, what AskFirst was able to do in terms of from a practice and a patient perspective. You've also got members from our support team, both Max and Sharon Hanley, who you may be familiar with, and they're here to talk to you about what support is going to be in place for practices in terms of getting this deployed, to be able to answer any questions from patients, and just to give you reassurance that there is a support arm in this to make this as pain-free as possible. So I'm going to start off with initially the overview video of what AskFirst Flu is about, and then I'll go into an overview in terms of how this works, why it's there to support you this flu season, and subsequently what work which we've done with practices in order to build this feature. So it has iterated, and we can iterate this based on your feedback today as well. So if there is something which you feel, Gaurav, look, if you could include this, this would be really, really helpful and useful. We're happy to hear that feedback from yourselves to see what we can do in order to make it work. And then there's the case of, if you are interested, what needs to be done in order to enable this for your practice. So this feature is available as part of the platform availability. It is free. It's not going to be charged in terms of anything extra. So it's a case of just making it available. So I don't want to get into the discussions in terms of what is this pricing going to be for this feature. It is something that's available and can be offered to your patients as soon as possible, really. So I'm just going to start with the video.
In 2020, AskFirst ran a pilot which allows patients to book flu vaccine appointments via the app. Buckinghamshire practices, Berryfield's practice and Western Grove Surgery both took part in the pilot. We caught up with Julian Harrington of Berryfield's and discussed the benefits he experienced firsthand.
Last year, with the COVID pandemic affecting practice services and pressure from patients phoning the practice higher than ever, we wanted to minimise the impact vaccine appointments would have on normal practice services. And the app did work well, and we achieved our aims. Over 30% of flu appointments were booked online, equating to approximately 550 appointments, significantly reducing telephone calls and saving over 25 hours of receptionist time. We also increased our patient registration of the app, and as a consequence saw an increase in usage to booking acute appointments, making further savings in time and reducing telephone calls into the practice. In managing patients, it was important for us to be able to differentiate age groups to ensure we could manage vaccination availability by type and target the patients we wanted to. We were concerned, for example, that the over 50s without any underlying conditions would be able to book before we were able to offer them a vaccine. The app was adapted to take into account the patient age based on their registration, and it would therefore only offer slots for that group and the vaccine type, or give a message that the flu vaccines were not available for them at this time. Patients were asked to identify and confirm their long-term conditions from a list, and whilst this was not fail-safe and a final check would need to be made at the clinic itself against the patient notes, we found that the error rate was insignificant. If there was no appointments available, we were keen that we did not lose the contact information. The app will record the contact and send the details to the practice by email. Overall, we were pleased with the application. Patients found it convenient and easy to use, and it saved time in the practice, reducing the impact of the vaccination clinics had on normal services.
That's just a quick video just to give you an overview of what AskFirst Flu is there for and how it can support both practices and patients. We've really kept this simple, and we've really built this around the patient so that they find it easy and intuitive in order to make a booking, and they do find it as a real alternative rather than calling in during practicing hours. So what are the benefits in terms of AskFirst Flu? And you've probably heard this from many suppliers who are offering flu vaccination sort of digital solutions. But some of the things which are unique with AskFirst Flu is it directly integrates with EMIS. So it directly surfaces appointments based on slot types, which you make available within EMIS. And we basically trawl through the patients which are using AskFirst Flu to see if they're eligible for a vaccination. So we look at their age criteria. We also ask the patient whether if they're at risk from a particular diagnosis. So they may have a particular diagnosis which puts them at the at-risk priority group. At the same time, you can phase this. So it depends on how and who you're going to be targeting within which weeks. So depending on what flu vaccinations you have coming in batches, you can make those slots available, and those will be then immediately made available to those using AskFirst Flu. And this allows you to not only ensure that you're getting good utilization of the slot type, so good uptake, but it also ensures those who have been hard to reach for flu vaccinations in the past because either they're working or they just don't fancy calling in, that you're actually capturing what their intent is. So if a patient decides to decline a flu vaccination or decides to go to a pharmacy for a flu vaccination, that information will be captured and also conveyed to the practice, so you can actually code it back to the clinical record. And what we're trying to ensure is meeting the 75% uptake target set by NHS England. All in all, what we want to do is significantly reduce the demand on your practice phone lines and also support administrative teams to ensure that they can support patient queries, which need to be supported, and those things which can be automated, such as making a booking, can be automated. So what have we found in terms of the benefits is as I've mentioned, to increase uptake, to minimize the wastage of any vaccines which you may have. It's also to create an online channel. And by this, we know more and more people are using online as a way to make interaction with the practice. And what we want to make it is meaningful so that when the transaction is done or the patient uses the feature, they're actually getting an appointment. They're actually getting the booking there and then. And it's not where one has to contact the patient again with an appointment outside. So we're trying to make it a one transaction, which allows the patient to be given the appointment, but also be given any what we call safety netting advice. So if someone develops any COVID-19 symptoms, that they know what to do. If they wish to, when they turn up at the appointment, we give them information such as do not turn up more than 5 minutes earlier. make sure they wear a short sleeve shirt or a blouse, and also just to make sure what they could expect after having the vaccination. So trying to alleviate some of the common concerns and also the questions which a patient may ask when they come in for a vaccine appointment. This allows and gives you 24/7 access to the patient, but that 24/7 access is controlled truly by the practice in terms of what they make available through EMIS. I'm not a clinician myself, so I've worked with general practices for a number of years, more than 10. But what I would say is it really supports you operationally, and it also increases that satisfaction rate from a patient perspective. Anyone's not on mute, if they could do, that'd be appreciated. Thanks. So I wanted to now just give you an overview of what this looks like from a patient perspective, because we do know one of the whole education pieces is to make it easy from a patient side. And this video just really explains how easy it is. So I'm just going to play the quick video.
We are prioritizing patients needing a flu vaccination. We will be running flu clinics at the practice. All appointments will be timed. It is important you are logged in as the person you are booking the vaccination for. The immunization does not actually contain any living flu virus. This means that it cannot cause flu or any other infections. If you develop a cough or cold shortly after having a flu immunization, it is a coincidence. I will need to share your data with your practice. Do you consent to that? Do you want to book a flu jab? Eligibility. Please select an option from the list applicable to you. Let me see what is available, and you can choose the date and time that work best for you. One moment, please. Would you like to filter available appointments? Let me see what is available, and you can choose the date and time that work best for you. One moment, please. Filter by clinician. Let me see what is available, and you can choose the date and time that work best for you. One moment, please. I found 24 available appointment times. Please choose one. Saturday, September 18th at 11:14 a.m. Would you like me to book it? All right. Please could you also provide a phone number the nurse can reach you on? You entered the number below. Is that correct? Your appointment has been booked successfully.
One thing I probably should stress here is the filters are optional. So the reason why we've introduced filters this year is some sites do offer multi-site patient bookings. So if you're a practice which has multiple branches, we've introduced ability to filter by locations, because we do see from patient feedback, they have a preference as to where they attend. However, if you're a single site location, the filters can be switched off. So the patient does not get offered that step because there's no added value in that. At the same time, I would say what we've tried to make it is really intuitive from a patient perspective. To create an account with AskFirst, if you haven't done this already, or your patients haven't done this already, it takes within a minute. You can set up. You do not need the practice to authorize this. They can do this straight away at any time. And it also, what we're hoping for is by increasing the uptake of AskFirst, they'll also start using the other features within the application as well, such as the symptom checker or the COVID-19 feature. So common questions which patients may have. And what we're trying to do is really prioritize your patient list so that patients that do need to be seen on the day can be, and those that can wait do have an appointment. But the main item which we want to at least ensure that the patient is reassured with is that they're being listened to and they're being supported. So now I will pass it on to Jolyon Harrington, who's an ex-practice manager from Berryfield's practice, just to give you his insight and his take on what the app was about. And also there'll be a position or a time later on in today where you can ask questions directly. And feel free to ask any questions really on this feature. So Jolyon, can you?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
I think we've covered fairly clearly the sort of practice resource savings and the convenience for the patients. But I would stress that wider benefit that once the patient has registered for the flu, they are then registered for the whole app. And so your uptake and use of the app can be increased and improved. In the convenience for patients, it was really vital that the communication went out. And we noticed at the beginning, this was a trial, that we didn't communicate, we only communicated on the website. And actually social media and all the other sites were really important factors in not only spreading the word for the benefit, but also in providing a how-to sort of system so that patients could actually follow it. And that cut down a lot of questions and calls that did initially come into the practice. And I think as a result of that, had we done that right from the beginning, we would have got a sort of 50% uptake on using the app versus a phone call, which is significant. There is a lot more prepared now by Sensely to help with that communication piece, and I think Sharon's going to touch on that again in a moment. What I did think would be useful was just going through those steps really of how easy it is to set this up. Everything is constructed in EMIS using those slot types, and I'll cover those in a second. But those slot types then control the shape or the sort of type of clinic that you want to offer. And they can be increased or decreased at any one time. You can set up one clinic at a time, or you could set up more than one. The app actually looks out over 5 weeks now for available appointments. So would offer more than one clinic if you wanted to do that, or whether you want to step through the clinics. I think the other thing that we really focused on was that it was an invite-only process. So we told the patients up front that you would be invited to come to flu, and don't call or contact the practice until you're invited. So you've set up the EMIS slot types in the AskFirst slot types in EMIS. Sent out an MJOG invite to those group of patients you want to focus on, say the over 65s to start with, or whatever. And then, as you saw from the app, they offer the variety of appointments that are available. And in EMIS, you can just set up either one whole clinician, just let's call it Dr. AskFirst, or you can actually separate out into the clinicians that you want. We did the latter, and we found that was really good for the HCA sign-offs. So you could actually specifically get the patient booked in, and there was the list, and the doctor could sign off the HCA against those specific patients there. But for the rest, although they were assigned to a clinician, we effectively free-flowed them on the day, and you could just pick the name against roughly around the time that they came in, and you could then process that patient. by whichever clinician was going to give the vaccine. So it didn't hold us back. It didn't create sort of little bottlenecks on the day at all. So it's a very flexible system. Here on the slide, here are the sort of slot types that we did consider creating and have. They're, I think they're fairly self-explanatory. We, in the trial, didn't use the 2 and 3-year-olds. You may or may not want to use the app for them. We did that as a sort of direct booking, but all the rest, we then gave different slot types for the age groups and type of vaccine that they were going to receive. A note there on the bottom, the pregnant, there is an option there to say that you are pregnant and therefore you're selected correctly into the appointment that you require. The second part is actually controlling the patient, really, and 2 aspects to control were put in. One is age, and through the registration process, the age of the patient is determined. So when they try and book in for an over 65 clinic, when they are 50, then that will be rejected. All those appointments just will not be offered to them. And they'll be told, your age group is not being selected at the moment. Please call back or make contact later. You'll be invited when it's ready. The second control was those long-term conditions. So you didn't have an age group in there that was inappropriate who didn't have a long-term condition. And as I said in the video, that wasn't fail-safe, but actually the result was pretty good, and the error rate was insignificant. So that filter helps, again, say to a patient, I'm sorry, there isn't a clinic available for you at the moment. We'll contact you when you're ready. And the last point was those waiting lists. What I didn't want was having a patient having done all the right things and going into the app and then ending up not being able to make an appointment just simply because there was nothing available, and we lose that contact. I know there is a concern over waiting lists, and that it effectively creates another burden, because obviously then you've got to go and interact with that patient. What I would say is that made a very good sort of call out, say, have we got enough appointments in there? Do we need to set up another clinic? Are we starting to get quite a lot of interest and we haven't got those appointment mix correct or whatever? And it allows you to adjust availability. So you do take a little hit, but if you use it as a monitor on availability, then it effectively, A, you don't lose the patient, but B, you can move on and adjust your availability accordingly. I think that's probably enough. I'm very happy to answer any questions as they come in a bit later on in the presentation, and I'll hand you over to Sharon.
I think Max is going to talk about the support package, but I'll just talk about some of the findings from 2020 and 2021. So this was last year, and as Julian has just described, we do capture the declines, and that shouldn't be understated, because by capturing those who have declined, at least you know whether you should keep on trying to contact that patient or not, because they genuinely may have declined because they have sought their flu vaccination from the local pharmacy, or they may just not want it because they've had the COVID-19 vaccine. And I think there's some myth busting which may need to be done around the COVID-19 vaccine does not protect you from flu and vice versa. We found there's a good uptake in terms of the actual app itself. It is an app as well as something which is accessible from your practice website. So if you haven't already, on your practice websites, you can have a banner put on there where a patient is able to click through and go through a web page where they can actually have the same experience. So we're not only saying this is mobile first, but we're saying it is available through both desktops, laptops, as well as mobile apps. Promoting and making patients aware is something which shouldn't be understated. You're only going to make this successful by actually making patients aware of the solution. So social media matters, and you've probably seen this in terms of other campaigns which you've done in terms of trying to help manage demand in your practice. And we do have a support package which works with you in terms of ensuring the right messages are conveyed and people are really clear as to what should be used in order to make a flu booking. So I'll pass you on to Max, who will talk to you about the support side for practices, and then we'll take questions really. So Max, over to you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Gaurav. So yeah, what we want to do here in the support, I'll just break it down between the patient support and the practices. So with the patients, we have a contact AskFirst support within the app, which gives them a single point of support to the user, so they don't have to leave the app to get any help with moving through or making their bookings through the app. And we also have we've created a strong and informative support base in the way of how-to videos. So these are demos that can be found on YouTube. And also I'll speak a little bit later about how you can actually communicate that to the patient through social media and so on. And these videos will be embedded into the app as well, so that again, the users just have a single point of support. When they're in the app, they can visit the help section and view these videos if they're having trouble working through the symptom checker or booking their flu vaccine. With the patients, so we have, with the practices, we have an onboarding checklist, which Gaurav will go into in more detail around that checklist in the next slide and give you an example of the onboarding process, such as configuring appointment books and so on. And we also have optimization recommendations. So we want to enhance patient care as much as possible, whilst at the same time relieving pressure on your practices. And so we're on hand with optimization recommendations to help you utilize the AskFirst product as much as possible. This could be in the form of appointment book configuration, how to set up clinics, giving you some tips. I mean, we're aware that you guys have been setting up clinics for years and you're well aware, but we are on hand if you do need any advice on how to do that, just to help smoothen some processes in the practice. And also tips in how to promote the product to your patients. So Jolien touched on earlier that when they did move to more of a push on their socials and on their practice websites, in communicating with the patients, uptake with the online registration could have gone up to 50% and taken more appointment bookings via the digital method as opposed to making phone calls to your practice. So any way that which we can increase that figure and drive those patients to book with the digital platforms such as AskFirst, it will make savings in your practice on resources such as time and cost. And we have a marketing toolkit which we've created and we can distribute with by Sensely. So we'll distribute that in different means. And in Buckinghamshire, I know they're using TeamNet as their central location to host all of that media and supporting documents such as telephone hold message examples, social media post examples, and marketing graphics and video links to Vimeo or YouTube. And if you do need any support in creating such pages, or you'd like more information on where you can find this material, then you can reach out to our support address. So the support address for all practices is askfirst@sensely.com. And that includes all technical support. So it'll be prioritized technical support. If you do have any issues in practice, then you can reach out to us there. And again, it's askfirst@sensely.com. And we can post that in the chat as well. And again, we can be in touch with different locations. As I say, Buckinghamshire use TeamNet, but we can work with you to develop either a central hub on your end at the CCG or practice level, but also on Sensely's website, and we can work together to work out a resource page on that. And again, lastly, each practice has a dedicated account manager. So when you come to us, you will be handled by a human that can help as quickly as possible.
Thanks, Max. So I'll move on to the next slide. So this is just an example onboarding checklist, because what I want to really make it simple, not only for the patients, but practices to really understand how quick and easy it is to onboard if you do want to make this offering available to those who have signed up to AskFirst. So patients do have to create an account in order to be able to make use of this feature. And the reason being is because we do eligibility checks in the background. So all patients are spine matched. and what only patients which are registered against your practice would be able to book in. And we've done that so that we have a virtual gatekeeper, because what we don't want is confusion and we don't want wasted slots. So what we want to ensure is patients, the right patients, are being booked in at the right slots, so that it is really clear from a nurse perspective who is turning up, and that they've also been given the sort of safety netting guidelines in terms of what they should do when they do turn up on the day of their appointment, and also what should they do if they develop any symptoms or things are worsening, etc. So in terms of the onboarding checklist, we ask how many sites, locations you have. Of course, we have some of this information up front, but we do not necessarily want to make any assumptions as to how you as a practice are going to be rolling out flu vaccinations. We also would like to see how you are going to be scheduling your sort of vaccination rollout, and that depends on what vaccines have come in and what's been confirmed by NHS England. And as Max says, we would work with you in order to ensure appointment availability. And this is important because what we've found over the years is sometimes appointments have been embargoed for some reason, and we strongly say if we can avoid embargoing appointments, that would be really good. But it's also ensuring you have a good spread of appointments, so morning and afternoons, different days if possible, just so that it fits with patients' availability in order to come in for an appointment themselves. This is the fourth point is quite a new point, but it's also very important as practices start building their relationships with their patients from a digital means. Some practices are very good and some practices are just starting out in this sort of area. And this is where we would support you with social media, and that's like Facebook, Twitter, and ensuring messages are really succinct and people understand it's important, because what we do want to ensure is visibility of your flu campaign so that people are using it from all ages, and not just the young, but also the elderly and those who are my age, middle-aged, and just aware that this is available. Because traditionally, people have always thought in order to make an appointment with a practice, they need to call in, where now what we're making is coming up to a digital channel. And this is allowing and freeing up the telephone line for those who do not have a digital channel. So those who do not have a digital means or are not comfortable, at least they still can call in. We would, working with Buckinghamshire CCG and their flu leads, we're working, and also other flu leads from other CCGs, is looking at what guidelines and leaflets do you want patients to take away or read up before having their flu appointment. And that's just to save time when a patient comes in for the vaccination, and also to really understand what the side effects may be. So what we're trying to do is really give that sort of information to patients proactively rather than only on a reactive basis when they do have questions. And one of the sort of benefits which we have with AskFirst is because it is a mobile app, we can send push notifications. So we can work with you in order to send push notifications to your registered users. We have many thousands per practices which have registered with AskFirst. And this should help patients really remember that, oh yeah, there is a digital channel in order to access advice and care support. So that brings us to questions, really. I've allowed enough time for questions and answers just purely because I know this is quite a new feature, but it is part of our platform. So I'll go to questions first, which have been asked on the chat channel. So the aspect on filters, it is configurable per practice, as I mentioned. So if you're not a multi-site multi-site practice, then we do not offer that filter. So the location will always be displayed, irrespective of whether you have filters or not, because we take that directly from your EMIS appointment session. So when you're configuring a session, you choose a location, and that's what we're extracting out and displaying within the app itself. So we do want to ensure that patients do turn up at the right place. So that's always displayed. So does it do any more than simply making the EMIS flu clinic appointments available online for patients to book and making sure that they are clearly labeled so patients know who they are for? So we've gone one step further. As much as we don't display the actual slot name, we do a background check, and basically on the background check, we then decide what slots are suitable for that patient which is logged in. So what we are doing is that gatekeeping aspect and ensuring the right patient is booking in, because what we've found is sometimes patients do get confused and they sometimes think like, okay, there's no 50 to 64 appointments available, so I'll try one available for over 65s, for example. But what they do not probably understand is that there are different vaccines which are available or made available depending on your age criteria. So what we're trying to do is not really educate patients in the sort of the logistic challenges a practice faces around what vaccines are suited for which patients, but we really do that sort of filtering as part of our digital situation or scenario. Sharon, was there anything else which came in? Do they need to sign in to book via the website? Yes, all patients need to sign in, but we've kept the sign up process really simple. So within a minute, people can actually create an account. But what we're also trying to really encourage here is the book flu vaccine appointment feature is there to increase uptake from your digital channel and help with your demand as a practice. So in future, they may look at it and say, oh yeah, I can use the symptom checker here rather than calling practice in. This will help you as a practice to manage your demand in future as well.
Gaurav, there is a question about coding direct into EMIS, one for the declines and obviously vaccination, but that's done at site. But are the declines coded in? So you want now too.
Okay, so the declines we do not immediately at this present moment code in. We send the actual decline information to the practice, and that's done over an email. And the reason why we do that is we're still working with practice to understand what the follow-ups are, because if there is a patient which you really want to follow up on, we don't want things to be overlooked. So we want practices to acknowledge it's been declined and they're aware. But if there are any follow-up questions or criteria, then we want to ensure that from a clinical governance perspective, that is understood. We can add it to the product roadmap if we feel that there is something where these could be coded with this SNOMED code. But at this moment in time, it does not code it directly into EMIS. We just send the notification to the practice.
Thanks, Gaurav. The other question was about the vaccination being noted in EMIS directly, but that would be done as part of giving the vaccination in the clinic. So that process stays the same. I think that's what you meant, Dr. Ballo, yes? About the vaccination being coded.
Yes, we can create our own protocols, just one press of a button and it'll code it.
Yeah, your protocol carries on.
You mentioned something about declined. The declined patients, but patients might have declined in the past, but not the current year. And often we speak to them and, they change their mind. So how does this work? So anybody who's ever declined in the past, you'll exclude them?
No, we won't exclude them. So it's available to everyone who registers for AskFirst and it's matched against your practice.
You only capture the ones we have invited?
Yes. So okay. Decline who have you invited and those who have organically come across the feature. By all means, you may want to decide as a practice that you're going to mjog or iPlato or whichever text messaging solution you use to send a reminder or a notification or invitation to. But that's how you run your reporting filters within EMIS itself. And we can support you on that at the same time.
Sure. So when the information about decline comes back, you said it comes as an email. It comes on EMIS GP to GP kind of through, interface with EMIS as a document, or does it come to a practice email?
So we send it to a practice email, and what some practices have done is set up a dedicated mailbox. We also have it as if you've only got one mailbox which you offer, we do make the subject heading really explicit that it's a decline, and you can put rules in place so that it does go to the right team, because what we want to make sure it's really streamlined in terms of who manages these declines, and that's part of the onboarding process to really understand how your flu vaccination process works in the practice, and if you want the declines to go to one mailbox or a dedicated mailbox.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. I see Ratish and Sam, you've raised a question around, can you explain how to configure the appointment slots, please? So we would cover that as part of the onboarding process, but in the nutshell, it's you would create slot types, which I'm presuming you have for each of your cohorts or age groups, and your flu vaccination types. And then as part of the onboarding and implementation process is we would just confirm to you this slot type is for this sort of cohort group, and we will do that mapping. So we do not want you to actually create more slot types or additional slot types for AskFirst. We will work with what you have, because what we've found when we've onboarded practices in the past is we've been able to work with what they've already configured, as long as we understand which cohort of patients it's applicable to. And that's the sort of we've really kept it simple so that practices are also not bombarded with all these sort of additional configurations and rotas which you may need to set up, because you've probably got a template which you want to reuse from last year. Yes, there is written material. There's an onboarding guidance and there's videos as well, so we can follow that. We can share those with you if you're interested in implementing this. Would patients not decline directly from the invite sent through MJOG like they normally do, meaning this would be coded? Yes, you can use MJOG. So if you're sending out your list and there's a way in which they're declined and it's automatically coded, by all means, that's another way in which patients could use. So that's another way in which you can, but this is just an omni-channel approach. Not everyone is used to MJOGs, or they ignore text messages, and they might find this a lot easier. And it's also capturing the reason why they've declined the actual flu vaccination. Can we amend the initial message in the app, read the clinics to our own messages or not? It depends on the message. So there is flexibility in terms of what you would like in there. But ideally what I would say is if there's good practice seen at one area, I'd look to share that across the platform. So there is flexibility in terms of what messagings is displayed to your practice cohort. However, if it's seen as something which is really innovative and it's really something that would work and help other practices, would look to share that, and that goes vice versa, because what we want to ensure is a real simple standardized process. And we also look at how long does it take in order for a patient to make a booking or decline a booking, and we really want to keep that in the low minutes rather than it taking tens of minutes, just purely because it's frustrating for patients, and we want to ensure completion. And that's what's come back from patient groups like HealthWatch when we've worked with them as to what they want from a digital solution. They really want it simple and quick and on demand, and that's what we're trying to build around this feature itself. Any other questions? Because I think I've gone through all the questions which are, and apologies if I've missed any out, but are there any other questions people have which they want to ask? So I guess the next step on this is, if your practices are interested in actually utilizing AskFirst as a book a flu vaccine option for their managing their flu vaccines, by all means, email askfirst@sensley.com, or you can email me at gaurav@sensley.com. And what we'd look to do is set up a quick call in the near future so that we really can get cracking on this. It's really, really quick in order to get this up and running, and it becomes immediately up and running. And then it's just a marketing visibility exercise in order to really ensure people are aware that this offering is in place. I know there have been some questions in the past. I know it's not been asked today, is around how do we manage COVID-19 boosters and what's happening on that. And we'd be interested in having a conversation with any practices which are looking to jointly offer flu and COVID together. But as COVID-19 vaccine boosters are still being finalized in terms of rollout, we're not saying it's here. We do have various sort of options available as part of book a flu vaccine, where if someone wants to book both, we can offer this, but we'd rather have the conversation first. And I'll probably do a separate presentation if you found webinars like these useful, just to go over how that would work in itself. So if there's no other additional questions, I'd like to thank you for your time, and thank you for those who have spoken today, Sharon, Max, Julian, and I look to hear from you guys soon. Thank you very much.